what's so cool about being a part of an original is the rehearsal process. So the difference being, if you are hired as a replacement in a show, so say the show like Wicked has been going forever. If I audition to be in Wicked and I get in Wicked, I will only have usually about 2 weeks to learn my track. So usually you only get 2 weeks. It's a very accelerated. You're the only person in the room. You learn choreography with just the dance captain. You learn music with just the music director. And then you have to do a lot of your own homework. You figure it out in 2 weeks. And then on like the end of those 2 weeks, you'll have a rehearsal with everybody in the company, what's called a put-in. So it's very accelerated, and it's a little bit of like, what's going on? And you make a lot of mistakes, like you're on the stage like almost immediately, because you're like, oh, I knew I came in wing one. I didn't realize like 3 other people were also going to be in wing one with me, because they weren't there during my rehearsal process. So it's completely different. The cool thing about being a part of an original show, which I have been really blessed to do, is that it's like the most collaborative, most creative room that you'll ever be in. So for me, especially if you're doing something original, like there obviously was a blueprint for Hamilton, so they kind of had their ducks in a row there. But Aladdin, for instance, I've been doing that one since like table reads. So I've been like ground up with that. So what that means is that I've had a really amazing opportunity to be in the room when Alan Menken is like creating, Disney magic, basically. He obviously, as you all know, is like, he can create a tune that it'll play over and over in your head. And he's very, how many Grammys later, and just very well known for so many shows. But Aladdin specifically, if anybody is familiar with Jasmine, she basically had a whole new world. Obviously, she sings a whole new world. And in the first act, they added a song called Palace Walls. And I was in the room when that was being created, and I was helping to create it. I was one of the original attendants, and it actually wasn't, I was also in the room when they were scrapping songs. So there used to be one called Call Me a Princess, and that song is now cut from the show. It's not in the show anymore, but we did several performances with this number called Call Me a Princess that like is now scrapped, and now it's called Palace Walls. And so it's really cool to be collaborating with people that are just at the top of their game. The same thing for like Casey Nicola, who is our director choreographer, who's also done a million shows, like Something Rotten, Book of Mormon, Spam-A-Lot. Like he has an amazing resume, and I'm in the room helping him choreograph and helping him like, oh, well, I think my character, might want to do this as opposed to this. And he's like, well, what would that look like? And with somebody like him who's so great, he's like, well, what does that look like to you? Show me something. And then like, if I get to do it, and he's like, oh yeah, I like that. I'm like, great. So I just was able to really contribute to what everybody sees now is all something that was created, not just with one person or two people, but like the whole company was being collaborative. And with that, it's really bonding and really amazing to put up a show with your fellow creators and to come in every day and have the opportunity to like really feel that creative. And then logistically, being in a first run show, you get to do things like the cast recording. And, that's always like, oh my gosh, I'm on a cast recording. Or the Tonys, you get to like go and perform on the Tonys. And so I got to do that. And those kinds of like dreams really that I had when I was a kid all come with doing an original show, and it's really a blessing to be able to do an original, because people have actually really lovely, amazing, sought after careers and never have the opportunity to do an original show, right? Because there's just not that many people per show. So it's pretty great. You also get more time. So before I was saying 2 weeks whenever you're joining like an existing show. If you're creating a show, because the show's never been done before, they don't even know what numbers they want, how it's going to look, or maybe they rearrange things. Generally speaking, for a show on Broadway, you would get 3 months to put it all up. And that includes like rehearsal time in the studio, that includes tech, and that usually includes like previews in front of an audience where you're actually rehearsing from 10 to 6 during the day, fixing everything that went disastrous the night before, and then you are performing at night. So those are exceedingly long days where you're literally working from like 10 to midnight. But whenever you're exhausted and tired, that's when all the fun mayhem starts. But yeah, so those are I think the bullet points of like being in a new show, it's just highly collaborative and creative, and that's my favorite part. You're not being plugged into somebody else's track. You're creating your own track. I think that for me specifically, this goes back to me just finally being like, I'm okay to be in the ensemble and this is really fun, was when I stopped trying to copy or literally like be somebody else. So I kept walking in rooms and I was like, you can be inspired by people you listen to. Like you can be inspired when you listen to different people's voices, but the minute you actually go, great, that was inspiring, but this is how I sound, that was like really a turning point for me personally. And that goes for movement, that goes for vocals. So everybody always wanted me to sound like Audra McDonald whenever I started, and I don't. But I kept trying to like manipulate my voice to sound like her. And finally I was like, what am I doing? Like, why am I doing that exactly? I am inspired by her voice. I do think she has a beautiful voice, but that is not my voice. So I'm inspired by that, but we're going to go ahead and still move forward like as myself. And the minute I started doing that, I actually started booking way more things because they are indeed looking for you, and nobody can be you except for you. So nobody can be Audra except for Audra. So it doesn't even make sense to try and go in there and sound like Audra. It's the same thing. Like if you were auditioning for an existing show, you're auditioning for Hamilton, you shouldn't go in there trying to sound like Philippa Sue because she's the only Philippa Sue there is. Like you have to go in there sounding like yourself. I mostly wanted to do this. There was a small point in time where I wanted to be a psychologist. And I did start taking a lot of those courses. Another reason why college is great, because you can just like try classes. I really want to be a psychologist. Let's start taking all these classes. So I did take all those classes and clearly missed musical theater. And so I came back. I wanted to be a psychologist. I thought, I think people are interesting and situations are interesting, but I think that that's what I also found interesting about musical theater is we're telling stories and we're getting to know people, and art, musical theater, movies, we're seeing and showing different perspectives constantly. And I think that that was the essence of psychology that I liked. It was, oh, I've never thought about it that way. But that's what you get to do when you're diving into a character. That's what you get to do if you're creating any character. If you're a writer, if you're writing characters, that's literally what you're doing. So I think that once I kind of like peeled back those layers, I was like, oh no, the psychology thing was like, I really just like was interested in storytelling, and people are interesting to me and perspective is interesting. So yeah, it's interesting how, art mirroring life, we've all heard that. And that was definitely an example of that for me. Don't count yourself out. Because for me, I got an audition for Hamilton and I turned it down because I said, oh, yeah, it's a great show. It's amazing. That's not for me. I couldn't get that show. I got another audition. I said, no, I don't want to embarrass myself. I don't want to do that. Four opportunities later, I finally went in and I booked it right away. And I sat there and I was like so happy, but I also was like, what was I doing telling myself that I couldn't do something that clearly I could do? So I don't know why we do that to ourselves. Sometimes we like to just, oh, that opportunity is for them, or that could be great for them. Why can't it be great for you? Why shouldn't it be for you? It absolutely should be for you. I really wish that when I was 16 that I would have told myself that I deserve every dream that I ever dreamt, big or small, and that to just go for it, because the only person that can't get you there is if you don't even try. Like you have to be in the arena, you have to be in the ring in order to actually win the prize.